a lot of people that I know of, I meet, I interact with, they see employee branding or employer branding rather in isolation, which is kind of the biggest mistake that you can commit. The good thing is, as an organization, you are already creating a larger brand, right?
Hmm.
Uh, the your employer brand can just piggyback onto that brand, right? It cannot happen in isolation.
Welcome to another episode of All in Recruitment by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. I'm your host, Lydia, and with us this week is Pranay Prakash, CHRO at BluWheelz. Great to have you with us, Pranay.
Thank you for having me here, Lydia.
So, Pranay, walk us through your journey in the talent space. You must have seen some pivotal changes in the industry. Is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, of course. It's been a pretty long journey at that, right? And I think recruitment per se has been considered to be the easiest entry point into the HR space for somebody who starts just fresh out of college, right? So right from my first assignment at Adecco, which was India's largest staffing company back then, to various greenfield projects at Reliance Retail, Videocon, various businesses of Videocon, and then the last about 10 odd years through various startups, very successful startups at that,
Hmm.
right? So that kind of is a very different ball game altogether because you need to scale, you need to scale really fast. But then the fun part is that you need to figure out solutions because the business cannot suffer for
Hmm.
one person less on the roles, right? So that's how the journey has been. I think fortunate enough to have a bunch of very good mentors and colleagues around me who have always helped me, handheld me, uh, and guided me through the entire process. So yeah, I mean, very exciting journey. And I'm still recruiting for a lot of roles. So that is one aspect of the talent space that probably does not die down, right?
Hmm.
A lot of good talent coming up. Something that I've observed out of my personal experience, which has changed or kind of evolved rather, right, is the mindset of the talent which comes into the talent pool
Hmm.
or within the organization, right? Right from, so we started from baby boomers to millennials to Gen Zs and then so on and so forth, right? There has been a very strong shift in the mindset of the people, right? There was a time when people used to shift jobs never in their life, right? Kind of sticking to one organization for a really long period,
Hmm.
to the time when people started shifting jobs for a few bucks, right? To the time when people are looking beyond money and the
Hmm.
role and the culture and those kind of aspects, right? So it's been a very, very fun journey all this while, right? Understanding the talent out there has been the biggest challenge. I mean,
Hmm.
their mindset, their demographics. I think with every industry that changes a lot, every geography that changes a lot, right? And then the the most fun part for me personally has been that every time you meet or interview somebody, uh, you kind of meet a new person sort of every day, right? A new
Hmm.
personality that you come across who you have never met before. And I am still to find two individuals absolutely, absolutely in sync with each other, right? So, right from the hiring managers to candidate A versus candidate B, different mindsets, different people, different backgrounds, and you still need to make it a fit, right?
Hmm.
So, all in all, a very enriching journey. I think
Enriching.
most
Hmm.
enriching part of the role.
And at what stage is BluWheelz currently in terms of hiring, and what are some key areas you're looking at? So,
So there are two parts of it. One is the an organization that you are trying to build, right?
hmm.
Which is for most startups that is true, right? You start from the scratch and then you take baby steps and then you scale and then you run and then you
Hmm.
kind of leap. Uh, and the second part is Blue Wheel especially is an industry which is it operates in an industry which is kind of evolving, right? So
Yes,
electric vehicles in India
EV.
is still a very new game, right? Uh, you don't have enough and more talent right now because we ourselves are alien to that entire concept and people are getting used to it. But the flip side is that since the industry is in by itself in a such a nascent stage, you don't have enough people who understand how an electric vehicle works,
Mhm.
right? Or how to sell an electric vehicle versus any other vehicle,
Mm.
right? Or how to maintain an electric vehicle versus a normal combustion engine vehicle, right? So those are the skill sets which are still evolving, and you still need to figure out because the company has to exist, the company has to grow, right? And then you need to figure out a lot of models. You have to sometimes you have to do a hit and trial.
Mm.
Sometimes you figured something out. Uh, there are times when you have figured something out, but it is only good enough to take it from 1 to 10, but not good enough from the point of view of taking it from 10 to 100, because that's a different ballgame altogether, right? So that's where BluWheelz is. It's a mix of blue collar, white collar, tech, non-tech, all sorts of folks. Surprisingly, nobody knows what to do with electric vehicles or how to go about electric vehicles. Uh, so we are figuring out that journey ourselves,
Mhm.
and hence we generally look for people who are willing to figure out that journey with us, right? Rather than looking for somebody. Okay, I mean, if you go out in the market seeking a sales professional with 10 years of EV selling experience, India has zero such people right now,
Mm.
right? So you'll
So
have to figure out how to do that.
So where do you look? I mean, how do you expand that kind of search? And if you are geographically, if it's a matter of geography and you need to make sure that they are there, locals, how do you make sure you find the kind of talent pool that's willing to probably move into your area?
Since you don't have that expertise readily available, you have to look for people who, one, align with the cause that you're trying to promote, two, align with the vision that you're trying to promote, three, who are willing to create that hustle and be part of that hustle for you, right? And then people who have some bit of that intelligence, right? Problem solvers typically. At a junior low role, you just need very execution focused and operational kind of people, right? So if they commit a small mistake, the impact is very small. The entire organization does not get impacted, right? But at a senior level, if those mistakes happen, then it's a bigger trouble that you're looking at.
Yeah, so speaking of plans that constantly change and evolve, and you need to have that evolve to be in a healthy kind of economy, such as the EV industry, right? So, in terms of talent acquisition strategies, Pranay, how do you make sure this is a key ingredient in aligning your talent acquisition strategies with the business's overall objectives?
So this is one mistake that I think a lot of larger organizations end up committing sometimes, and startups would commit that probably a whole lot more, right? Is to look at talent acquisition purely from a hiring lens and not aligning to what the company wants to achieve out of that, right?
Mm.
Uh, a very classical example of that could be, and this is one mistake that people keep on committing, is to throw people at problems, right?
Mm.
That does not ever solve the problem, right? Because once you get into that habit, you think, okay, more people will solve this for you. That does
Mm.
not happen because you still don't have the right brains working on it, right? So, what is the larger objective that you are trying to achieve? Does the person that you are interviewing or assessing at any given point in time, to some extent, align to that larger objective, right? And if he or she does, then you kind of get him on board or get her on board, right?
Mm.
And then together you figure out solutions, right? So we still look for people who can build those solutions, co-create those solutions for us, right? At a certain level and beyond, there's nobody who comes into the system with just one interview or interview with the line of reporting. We have a cross functional interview kind of a
Mm.
system right now also, where everybody who comes at a certain level and beyond, typically mid managerial and above, has to be necessarily talking to two, three, four different people across the functions. Sometimes neither of these guys are available for some reason or the other. The CEO or the founder has to get involved and he interviews, right?
Mm.
And then there's a quick sort of, because you don't have that kind of a time to recruit
Mhm.
people because you're losing business every day, right?
Right.
So there's quick sort of a debrief, any classical red flags that you see, right? So we gonna go on a theory of that, we go on the theory which says that, no red flags means you can give it a try. The second challenge is at this early in a stage for the company and for the industry, organizations don't have a lot of money to throw at people,
Hmm.
right? So convincing somebody who's drawing probably 50, 60, 70, 40 lakhs a year to come down to maybe 1 lakh a month and then plus some ESOPs, and then are you in the long run with us, right? Do you want to have that skin in the game? So that alignment also kind of becomes very, very important. Do you let go of very good, solid candidates because of budgetary constraints? Sometimes you have to. So those are the kind of key differentiators, and hence, at a certain level and above, people have to be interviewed by a whole bunch of people before we even consider them for an offer.
So, how do you look at ensuring that talent acquisition and employer branding, for instance, are strategically maybe integrated rather than functioning separately as totally different entities?
Yeah, I think and a very valid question, and very easy to commit a mistake on that,
Hmm.
because a lot of people that I know of, I meet, I interact with, they see employee branding or employer branding rather in isolation, which is kind of the biggest mistake that you can commit. The good thing is, as an organization, you are already creating a larger brand, right?
Hmm.
Uh, the your employer brand can just piggyback onto that brand, right? It cannot happen in isolation, and it does not work the other way around, right?
Hmm.
You cannot create a very good employer brand but have a very poor product brand, right? That cannot happen. You build a product brand, and your employer brand goes along with it, right?
Hmm.
But I think the biggest brand ambassadors are, one, your current employees,
Mhm.
right? If you give them the right recognition, okay, why are you happy? I mean, this organization is a total chaos, but you are still surviving with
Hmm.
us. Why are you here? And I think the bigger ambassadors are people who have left that organization, right? Who are typically an alumni of my
Alumni.
organization. Are they going out and leaving a good word in their circle for my organization? The least that you can do is to make that exit process very, very smooth for the individual, right?
Mhm.
So it does not actually start when you are reaching out to a candidate. It actually starts when the candidate is moving or the employee is moving out of your organization,
Hmm.
because that's the easier problem to solve, right? Creating that experience is not difficult. When people know us in the market, our clients talk well for us, right? That helps me build a brand for the organization, and my employer brand kind of goes along with it.
Mhm.
I have had cases where we had very high CSAT from some clients because they experienced our services, right? And a couple of people from those clients approached us, hey, can you hire us because we think you're doing some amazing job, and then
Hmm.
I want to get a piece of that, right? So how do you make somebody want a piece of what you're doing, right?
Hmm.
The overall culture, the openness to disagree, right? The openness to throw ideas which may end up in zilch practically sometimes, right? Those are the things that you need to sell, right? We are
Hmm.
not also a lot hung up on the culture of the organization, because uh, by choice or by chance, all organizations from day one upwards, they have a certain culture around that organization, which has already started getting built, right? So anybody
Hmm.
who says that, okay, I'll shape up that culture and change it to something else. Now, changing that culture 3 years into the organization's existence may probably destroy the organization also,
Hmm.
right? So anything of this sort, or the conventional stuff that people try to do, we make it a point that we don't do any of that, right?
Right.
Our interviews never happen, or our interview debriefs never happen around, okay, will this guy be a cultural fit? Because, I mean, to be honest, it's a 15-month-old operation, right? I don't know what my culture is. I cannot define it today. It's
Hmm.
too early for me. My entire focus is on building the business,
Mhm.
right? But there is some sort of a culture which exists within the organization that
And organic
has
and
invariably
organically.
got created, right?
Hmm.
So those are some of the things that on the employer branding side, I think work very well. I'm 200% sure these can work amazingly well for a lot of organizations. I've seen this in my previous organization where at an early, and especially when you go around hiring tech folks, right? Obviously, good resources, mighty expensive. If you play the money game, there'll always be another person who'll be willing to pay more than what you can pay or what you can afford to, right? And then just like any other initiative, marketing or branding initiative, employer brand also has to be sometimes customized to certain audience or certain population. What gives me the kick may not give the same kick to the other person, right? So how do you sell that role to me and the organization to me versus how do you sell it to somebody else? That can differ. So the sooner you figure that out, the better it is for the organization, and the better and faster brand that you end up building. And then the first point that I mentioned, and just to reiterate, is how well you are able to piggyback on the overall product brand that you are creating, right? If your overall product sucks or it does not work out, whatever employer brand you create adds up to zero, basically.
You also spoke of a different kind of motivation that the younger generation is looking towards. When they find a kind of job that they want, they might be looking at the scope, they might be looking at culture. So how do you approach recruitment when it comes to roles that are that niche or very specialized?
Uh, Again, I mean, I don't think the basic fundamentals change a lot on that also, right? There are a bunch of roles. I mean, uh, if you ask somebody who's in their maybe 40s or so or mid 40s, who's a car aficionado, for example, right? Or who's very, into cars and vehicles and all. This guy can open your bonnet and do everything with the vehicle, right? When it comes to diesel engines, right? Or when it comes as compared to diesel engines, when it comes to your electric vehicles, the entire mechanism changes, right? So whatever you are able to do with your diesel or petrol engine, you cannot do any of that with your electric vehicle because these are more delicate, right? So, but then that talent is not available. Nobody is training that talent right now, right? So then you go back to the roots, go back to a drawing board, you look for partnerships, and there are certain roles which you'll always keep on hiring for, right? Not vanilla roles, niche only, but they'll keep on coming up every now and then, right? So how do you build a pipeline for that, right? So for example, we went back to the logistics sector skill council and we said, okay, hey, you'll train a lot of people onto logistics, right? Why don't you work together with us and we'll tell you, we'll help you because we have connects with all the OEMs and the manufacturers and all of those guys. We'll get you vehicles and we'll do part of the setup. Why don't you start training people who can maintain electric vehicles, right? Be it a scheduled maintenance, be it a preemptive maintenance, be it a post facto maintenance, whatever it is, right? Because nobody knows that, right? Same goes for maybe when you are hiring a driver, right? Now, there are only so many electric vehicles in the country right now on the cargo side of it, right? Now, when you want to hire drivers, you'll not find drivers who have driven an electric vehicle ever. So you invariably get a driver who was running an ICE engine vehicle or a diesel engine vehicle, and then you're converting that guy into an electric vehicle driver, right? So how's that transition process working out for you, right? Or have you figured that out, right? Do you always train people once you get them in, or can you set up a mechanism where you can get them pre-trained and then you keep on hiring them? Because this maintenance is kind of a niche skill for us right now, right? From a purely operational perspective. But then how do you kind of create that pipeline where everywhere you expand? We operate in 17 cities right now. We'll end up operating in maybe 100 cities in a few months from now, right? Every city will need one, two, maybe X number of maintenance personnel, right? You may not have an external partnership everywhere or a reliable external partnership everywhere, and you'll have to put your own resources. Now, how do you get 200 maintenance guys in a few months, right? You cannot bring them all in and then spend a bunch of money on them because you have to be wary of the cash that you spend. And then you train them for 2 weeks. Some of them get trained, some of them don't get a hang of it. Then what do you do with those people, right? And if you are trained, if you want those people to be deployed across 100 cities, you cannot be calling all of them in and then training them and then sending them back. That's a different process altogether, a very expensive process at that, right? So how do you find those partnerships where this can happen and you can just disseminate them across the city and they are pre-trained and then just seat them there and then they are off to a good start.
So when it comes to hiring for speed, How do you balance that need to be really quick in your hiring and make sure that the quality of your candidates is also sound?
So again, two parts to it. One is the classical blue collar where you end up hiring in masses and then you need like
Mm,
200 drivers every month and so on and so forth because you need to support your expansion and growth, right? That's a different problem altogether. That's a problem which has been cracked to a huge extent by, say, all the logistics players or the e-commerce players, right? And in my past experience, I have cracked that, right? So you have a lot of external support that you seek, maybe manpower agencies or partners, online platforms, and so on and so forth, right? Which specialize in your blue collar hiring, and you can outsource it to them. So instead of having five recruiters with you for this kind of a population, at least, if you go out, if you reach out to vendors, you'll have access to 200 recruiters. While
mm,
you as an organization would never have 200 recruiters, right? It does not make any business sense, right? And then on the other side, you have people where you need a certain, where which are typically white collar roles, as we would want to call it, right? For lack of a better phrase, right? uh, we place a lot of bet on people coming out of college, right? Because
mm,
college placements, unfortunately, are not that great over the last couple of years, right? People are seeking jobs. Some of these guys are very smart. The younger generation is much smarter than what I was probably when I got out of college, right? So these guys, and some of these guys are really hungry and they want to do anything because they have to, one, get a job and to make a career out of it, right?
mm.
And that's the other differentiator is that when you speak to a candidate, you just offer them a job, which is a very transactional kind of a thing
Right.
because, they come provide a set of services and they are paid for that versus offering them a career, which is a
Mm,
more long-term kind of an association, and the person sees his or her growth into that, right? So we bet a lot on these young folks.
mm,
Somebody who's out of college 2 months back and still finding out a job. He writes to us randomly. We ensure that we at least somebody speaks to that guy. Maybe a 5 minute conversation, and then you figure out, okay, we can fit this guy somewhere, or we need a role, and then you explore it further, right? So when people reach out to you, you just simply don't say no to them, right? So that is something that I think a lot of people are working on that, and I hope that gets solved really faster than expected, because that's a huge opportunity. Uh, you lose out on good people because of their inability to write CVs, right?
mm.
You are not hiring them to write CVs. You are hiring them to do a different job altogether, right? And hence my personal, I don't know, it's a very strong word, but then dislike for rejecting people based on their CVs, right? Because if somebody has reached out, made the effort, he's reaching out to you probably 5 times in a month, right? At least have a word. Maybe the guy's
Mm,
worth something, right? But you look at the CV and say, okay, hey, he does not match with the JD I have because this is the JD, right?
mm,
That job description is something that I have written. Now, how much of that role I also understand is another question that needs
mm,
to be asked of the hiring manager, right? Because, and that's a very traditional way of looking at things. I
mm.
mean, I'm not saying it is bad or good. It has worked well for a lot of organizations for a very long period of time. But considering the kind of demographics that are coming into the workforce, I don't think that is going to work much longer.
What kind of traits do you think a recruiter should have now when they look at different kinds of CVs, especially those that are coming into an industry that is so new and just breaking into the
I
market?
think when you're talking to somebody, or if somebody has reached the stage where he's having a physical interaction, now if you get
Mm,
a whole bunch of CVs, then you rather use a tool, right? And
right.
maybe an AI-based platform or something like that. And you ask them to give responses to certain fixed set of questions or a random set of random question generator kind of a thing. And then the AI kind of analyzes those responses and tells you,
Mm,
okay, you can talk to this guy, you cannot talk to this guy, or whatever the outcome is, right? That is one. Uh, but once that step is done, and if this person is speaking to an actual person,
mhm,
right, and not a system or an algorithm, uh, you need to understand if the person will ask questions,
mm,
right? As a hiring manager, I take it on myself, or our teams take on themselves to get a person who's 70% there in terms of these traits, and the remaining 30% we'll train them, right?
mm,
So what you need to then check is the person trainable?
mm.
the person is trainable, he or she is good enough, probably, right? You just need to invest some amount of time into that individual, and you'll get the results that you want, right? So those are some of the traits that you need to look for.
Mm.
Whether this guy will get bogged down by situations, whether this guy will keep on trying hard, and whether this guy will be able to communicate if he gets stuck, because all of us will get stuck at some point in time or the other with certain situations, right? So what do you do in that scenario? Do you keep it to yourself, or go in, or just sit quietly? Because I tried 5 times and nothing happened, and I reached 10 people, I escalated an email. So when I, sorry, ask these kind of questions from somebody's past experience, and somebody says, so a typical question would be, okay, this situation happened and what did you do, or what would
Mm.
you do? Okay, I'll escalate an email to whatever, my next level manager. Okay, your manager did not respond to that email for 2 days. What do you do? What can I do? My manager did not respond, right? So that is a red flag for me. If
Mm.
the person says, no, I called him up, I texted him, I wrote again,
Mm.
and kept on trying till this was solved, or the manager came back and said, we cannot do anything about it, that answer you cannot control, right?
Mm.
But it shows that the person was persistent and he wanted to get the job done, right? End of the day, you need people who can get the job done for you, right? You don't need people who know everything, because deep inside we all know we don't know everything. And especially in an industry like ours where nobody knows anything right now,
Mm.
right? Same was the case with a Zomato or a Swiggy 12, 13 years
Mhm.
back. Same was the case with a delivery few years back, right? And all the startups, the entire startup ecosystem has been built around with people who have kept on persisting despite all odds, right?
Mm.
And that is how you build a company. And those are the kind of people that you need to get in.
So in terms of where BluWheelz is, it's really greenfield. So, where are you with L&D, or what is the emphasis on training and development?
For us, that is very important. For every organization, that is important, but more so in our case, because again, the industry size is very small, very, very
Mm.
nascent. So you don't get a readily trained person who can come and
Indeed.
crack this for you, right? You cannot keep on building your internal capabilities for training people at this stage of the organization, at least. Maybe at a future date, you'll probably have a team and structure and everything.
Mhm.
But then what you do is, as a core business, what do we do? We fly vehicles, right? The vehicles can come from Tata or the Ashok Leyland and all the OEMs, right? We do have partnerships with them, not only to take their vehicles, but also to provide us their trained drivers who can train my drivers and my
Mhm.
operations guys who can further train. And so it's a classical train the trainer model
Mm.
without one single trainer, or a, I mean, structured trainer kind of an organization with
Right.
us. But then I have 15 trainers who are training people for me in every city, for
Mhm.
every OEM, right? But we ensure that, every time a new driver comes in, or a new rider comes in, or a new operations guy comes in, we connect him to the relevant OEM in that city, or the dealership in that city, and the guy gets trained on that particular vehicle. If there are 5 different types of vehicle, then he has to go through every single vehicle, because my supervisor needs to know the in and out of every single vehicle.
Mhm.
Right? What happens when the vehicle suddenly stops in the middle of the road? What do I do? Right? So those quick responses, who do you
Right.
call? Right? Are there any small fixes that you can check for yourself and then say, okay, my vehicle
Mm.
is fine now because something minor had happened, right? You are not somebody who takes a plier and a wrench and everything and start opening up the vehicle, because that's what we all used to do in the
Mm.
past, because these are different kind of vehicles, right? So that's where we are on the L&D right now. We obviously, it is very, very important, because nobody knows anything.
Mm.
The OEMs know what they have created or what they have manufactured. They have their own people who are thorough with the vehicles. We just loan them to ourselves and we say, okay, can you please train our guys, because our
Mm.
guys will be plying your vehicle soon, right? And if your vehicle stops, I'm going to give you a call and give you a hard time. So rather train my person, and then both of us remain happy.
Mm. And finally, Pranay, what advice would you give someone who is starting out in the talent space today? I know you spoke a lot about the traits earlier, and how to, several even unconventional ways of looking at different segments of talent acquisition. But for those who are starting out in recruitment, or even in wanting to have a career in talent acquisition, what advice would you give them?
Uh, don't be shy of doing anything. Uh, take things head on. Uh, Communicate with your stakeholders, the people who you are hiring for, right? Try and become part of the business and not just a recruiter, because none of your business people wants to hear your HR or your talent acquisition stuff. They are concerned about their business, right? If you talk to them about their business, if you are able to narrate your problems to the business owner, a lot many times in my experience the business owners understand your problem and they sometimes come up with wonderful solutions that you as a recruiter were not able to do,
Mhm.
right? So maintaining that communication is very important. Getting a hang of the business is very important. Why that role is important helps you sell that role to the candidates that you'll end up hiring, right? And how that role adds value to the organization is something which is again very very important to answer, because that is a differentiator between somebody who's been hired and somebody who's contributing,
Mm.
right? So for anybody who wants to get into the recruiting space and start a career there, uh, remember, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. By the time you aspire to become a TA head or a head of talent acquisition or head of employer branding and all, it's a long 10, 12, 15-year journey. Being a big fish in a small pond sometimes gives you immense learning. The flip side is a lot of things will be unstructured and you'll have to figure it out. So go find out a mentor who can help you, guide you, because once in a while we all will get stuck again, right?
Mm.
And then and within the organization, there'll be probably nobody who will help you out because nobody has that expertise, right? Uh, it's not a very difficult task. All positions get filled at some point in time or the other. What separates recruiters from good recruiters is how soon are you able to fill those positions with the right set of people.
Mm.
That's the only differentiator. I work on a role and you work on a role. Both of us are good recruiters, same experience, same exposure. We'll be able to close it. You can do it in 2 months. I'll take 6 months. That's what makes you a better recruiter than what I am, probably.
Thank you very much, Pranay. These are valuable insights really into how, you're breaking into not just an industry, but just a talent pool that is absolutely new in 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 this whole EV sector, in fact. So for those listening in who want to pick up a conversation with you, maybe explore a little bit more about what you're doing at BluWheelz, where can they contact you?
I'm accessible. I have a decent enough LinkedIn profile. I do not say no to any of my LinkedIn requests. Anybody who wants to reach out, they can easily reach out. That's the best and easiest way to reach out. Just drop me a DM or reach out to me, send an invite, and we'll connect. I do actually spend a lot of time in talking to young folks because I think whatever bit that I have learned, if I can pass it on, it's going to be a huge value add for me. Already in the process of putting all my experiences together. So sometimes maybe mid of next year, sometimes around the mid of next year,
Mm.
they'll that all that will be out in the form of
A book.
a structured book. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's what I'm trying to do. Uh, I started off that book writing journey, but then turns out that it's a very difficult journey than reading a book, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll delay that a lot.
Mm.
Basically, it's a crux of anything and everything that I've learned all these years. So, if I've done anything worthwhile, you'll find it there. If I've done something where I screwed up badly, you'll find it there.
Looking forward to seeing that, Pranay. Thanks for sharing. And again, thank you for your time and for joining us. And we have been in conversation with Pranay Prakash, CHRO at BluWheelz. Thank you for joining us. And remember to subscribe to stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.